My name is Angie, and this is a story I wasn't supposed to find.
And I'm her sister, Cindy. We grew up hearing almost nothing about our great-grandmother, just a name, Stella Smith. No photos, no grave, just a blank space in the family story.
We knew a little about her, like she was married in Springfield, Illinois in 1925. She had 2 daughters that she gave up for adoption through the Illinois Home and Aid Society. And then absolutely nothing. Nothing before 1925 and nothing after giving up her children in 1930.
We had no idea what happened to her, where she went, or even if she was alive for long after that. She was just missing, and she stayed missing for over 90 years until a DNA test cracked the case wide open.
This is Buried Threads, a podcast about family secrets, silence, reinvention, and what happens when lost stories begin to resurface. Here's a quick recap of what we've uncovered in our search so far. Estrella Suarez came to the U.S. from Spain as a child to live with family, Manuel Suarez. Manuel was a widower with a young baby, Luisa. Estrella joined Manuel and his soon-to-be wife, Rosa, and little Luisa. She was raised as part of the family, which expanded with Manuel and Rosa's 4 children together. At age 15, Estrella married Emilio Valdez and had a child of her own, Mary Rose. For reasons unknown, Estrella disappeared one night, leaving her family and young daughter behind.
Around a year later, and 50 miles away, a marriage announcement for Christopher Columbus de Board and Stella Smith was the earliest documentation we had of our great-grandmother. The couple had 2 children together, Florence and Marie Christine, and for reasons unknown, Stella gave her children up for adoption and shortly after disappeared from history. Christopher would appear in some documents for another decade or so, but then his whereabouts are unknown. Florence was raised with the foster family and had connection with her birth father throughout her life. Marie Christine was adopted, her name changed, and she always longed to know her birth family, but never did. She searched as an adult, but it wasn't until her grandchildren, that's us, took up the search. And that's when real progress was made. After a couple decades and a DNA test, we made the shocking discovery that Estrella Suarez and Stella Smith de Board were the same person.
Ever since, we've been working to piece together the story of our great-grandmother. But we realize it isn't just her story. It is the story of many different people, individuals, and whole families now connected by this one woman, the choices that she made, and we really know very little about her.
So this summer, you reached out to Paul, who is our close DNA match, who helped make this connection between Estrella and Stella, really changing everything we thought we would discover about our great-grandmother. And you asked him if he would be willing to meet with us, and he was gracious enough to agree. So this week, we went together with our mom, Chris, to meet with Paul and some other family members. Now, these are relatives that we have only recently discovered through the DNA match. So tell everyone how we're connected and why you wanted to meet.
Well, first, we're connected genetically through Paul. Paul is the son of Mary Rose, and Mary Rose is the daughter of Emilio and Estrella, the first daughter that she left behind. Paul also brought along 2 of his sisters and a niece. Of course, we were both there with our mom, who is the daughter of Marie Christine, the second child of Estrella and Christopher. So Mary Rose and Marie Christine are half-sisters. That would make genetically Paul and his 2 sisters our mom's first cousins.
I think this in-person meeting was a little outside our mom's comfort zone.
Yes.
I mean, truthfully, it was a little outside my comfort zone too. But I'm really glad that we got her to go and that we were able to be there with her. Truthfully, I don't think any of us knew what to expect.
Right.
So let's just start talking about the day. It was just 2 days ago for us. Where we met, what we saw, and then we can dive into the conversation we had together.
Sure. So we met in the town of Sandoval, Illinois, which is a small town in southern Illinois, and it is the town...
Or maybe central Illinois. Like, depends on where you are in Illinois and what you consider.
How you classify. So Sandoval is the town that the family ended up finally establishing themselves in and living long-term. So in the younger years of the family, they moved around a little bit between Taylor Springs and Beckenheimer and some other cities.
Beckmeyer,
excuse me.
And then Hillsborough.
In Hillsborough. This is when, again, in the younger years, when he was working with the mine and moving around a bit. But Sandoval is where they ended up and had their final settling, raised their family, and it's also where Manuel and Rosa were buried.
So talk about the Suarez family in Sandoval, because that was really interesting.
Yeah, so we're driving through town, heading over to the cemetery. And as we drive around the corner, here's an apartment complex. And the sign out front said
Joe?
Yes, Joe Suarez Apartments. And I'm like, wait a minute. And they're like, yep, that's the same Joe. And then as we came around the corner, he told us that there was a community center there that was also named the Joe Suarez Community Center. We didn't see that. But what was interesting, so Joe is the son of Manuel and Rosa, the only son, actually. Everybody else is girls. And he owned a couple of small businesses. He owned like an ice house. He owned the junkyard in town. He also was a beloved mayor of the town for a long time. And so clearly his memory has lived on.
His mark is still there.
Yes. So but it was very interesting to see memorialized fixtures that related to the family.
Yeah, that was really cool. So we went to the cemetery.
And there we were able to see, it was a beautiful cemetery. A lot of times when you see kind of a country cemetery, they're not well kept up or well maintained, but that was not the case. It was very well.
They were some really pretty headstones.
They were, yeah. And so we were able to see the headstones for Manuel and for Rosa, as well as several of the extended family members, daughters and their spouses. And so there's probably maybe 10 people from the family that were buried there.
Maybe even a little more.
Maybe more, yeah. And so we were able to just walk through and
Emilio.
see. And Emilio was there. So Emilio is Estrella's first husband, and he did stay connected to the family. Mm-hmm. His nickname was OK, and I had seen that on documents during the research. I didn't realize how big of a deal that was, but literally OK was written on his headstone as well.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
So anyways, we were able to see all the different people there. And it was just, for me, it was just a little bit surreal because I've been studying this for a long time. I've seen these names for a long time. I've pored over these names and done all the research. And now I'm seeing things in the flesh. I'm seeing Paul, face to face. I'm seeing, these gravestones. And it just makes it a little bit surreal. It kind of takes it from paper to life.
Yeah. And not only seeing them, but seeing them with people who actually knew them.
Yes.
To some degree.
Right.
I mean, varying degrees, but they knew them. And that was it just made them real in a way that names on paper or documents just doesn't do that.
Yeah. So then after we finished there at the cemetery, we rode back with Paul to his house, and he lives in a town about 30 miles away. I think it was Mount Vernon, if I remember right.
Can't remember. Kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
And so we went there and spent the afternoon, or I guess it was the morning, there with them. And so we were able to sit down, all gathered together. Another sister came. One sister had already been with us on the first part of the tour. Another sister came after church, and so she was there with us also. And we were able to just kind of share stories. He pulled out this big, massive binder that had, printouts of all the research that he had done. And so we were able to kind of look through the things that related to our particular part of the search and what we were looking for, and just be able to share stories. And that's what we wanted to. We wanted to hear them talk. Tell us what you know. Tell us what you remember. Tell us about Manuel and about Rosa. And we were able to share kind of some of our thoughts and what we think about them, about the story as well. But it was a great time.
And so that's actually one of the things that struck us the whole weekend, I think, was that, I think Paul and his family thought they didn't have anything to share with us, that they didn't know anything. And actually, Paul wasn't looking for Estrella when he started his family search. He was looking for other family, and not. It really didn't even seem to occur to him to look for Estrella, for his mother's mother. And so you kind of surprised him,
right? Because once his DNA matches in the system, it's there, it's fair game, right. And so we were able to connect it together.
I think he had even stopped actively looking for anybody at that point.
He wasn't
so he was shocked,
Yeah.
But I do think they thought they didn't have anything new to give us, that we only had to share with them what we had discovered, which was some new information for them.
Because they didn't know anything about what had happened after.
Right.
And so for them to wrap their mind around that there was a life for her after, here's the pieces that we know.
Right. But in sitting down and having conversations, stories start to come out.
Yeah.
I mean, they started to maybe even have memories they haven't had for a while or whatever, but all of a sudden they're telling stories that are giving us new information. Okay, not cold hard facts, like
no bombshells.
Right. No bombshells, no dates or places that solidify it's nothing that we can put in a book and say we know 100% for sure. But stories about perceptions or conversations that were had, that they had with their mother and their mother had with, it does give us a fuller picture. It did give us new information, even though they thought they didn't have it. Right. So I just feel like these in-person conversations and some others that we had, like they're just change. It really is giving us so much more information that we would never find on a database.
Right. Yeah. So we'll talk about some of the things that we learned in a little bit.
Yes, we will. We'll get there.
One of the other things that was really special, so they brought out pictures, and they did not have any pictures of Estrella, and we knew that they didn't have any. They had already told us that before, but they shared pictures of their family, and so it was, again, to be able to see in the flesh or see these photos of people that we had studied and talked about and names we've thrown around and be able to see them together and see them happy and, beautiful pictures, beautiful family. And then my mom brought pictures of her mom, of Marie Christine. And so for them, it was amazing to watch them look at the pictures. You could tell there was a definite enjoyment there, and then watching them find the resemblance, like being able to see, especially at certain ages with Marie Christine, how much she favored their mom, Mary Rose. And then funny little idiosyncrasies, like in the conversation, it came out that Mary Rose, most of her life was a cook, and she loved to cook, was a fantastic cook, and she cooked for schools and things.
Cafeteria.
And that's what Marie Christine did too. She was a cook in the later part of her years. She worked at a university sorority as a cook. And so it was just fascinating to see those little idiosyncrasies that lined up.
Yeah, actually, when the family member said, "Oh, our mom was a cook and she did this," and we were like, our grandma was a cook, and she was a little emotional about that. That brought tears to her eyes to think like these people really are connected. I mean, they're half sisters. Not that cooking itself, but just the personality that makes up. They had something in common. And looking at the pictures. Maybe Mom was being a little dramatic about it in a good way, but she started with some young pictures of Marie Christine as a child, and she started kind of handing those down the table, and then they were passed around to the whole family.
Quite dramatic.
Okay, it was dramatic, but that's okay. I love it because she started passing down young child pictures, and then they were getting a little older, and we kind of joked about like, oh, here's a school picture and she doesn't look happy, okay, middle school age or whatever. And it was about that age that the family's like, oh, I can sort of see some, maybe, and then we got to what I would say would be young adult age, and there was one that just took breath away.
Yeah, visibly.
They took the picture. Maybe it would have been late 40s, early 50s time period, and they pulled that picture up, and there was just this audible, because they said, we want this picture. Yeah. Now we're giving them more than just that picture, but that picture. They said, this looks just like our mother. And they're half sisters. Right. So, like, it's totally reasonable. But I also feel like there was some strong resemblance between Paul and my grandmother. Yes.
Definitely features that we recognize and we saw that undeniable.
Yeah. Which is so cool for all of us. I think that was really neat. So, and we'll share some of the pictures that we can share. They had a picture of Manuel and Rosa and some of their children. That was pretty incredible. Of course, like you said, Estrella wasn't in that picture, but
she was already married by now.
She was already married out of the house. But
that picture would have been about the time she got married. So you're talking in the mid-20s. It was a beautiful picture.
Yeah, it was really great. And they enjoyed looking at it and having memories and recognizing people or not. Some of them were like, I don't recognize that person. So
I asked them at one point, what would your mom think? What would Mary Rose think if she was here, seeing all this and experiencing? And I think that was a little bit of an overwhelming, question, but they were just like, she would just be amazed. She literally had no idea. She didn't know. And we'll talk more about what she didn't know, but she just didn't know any of this. Yeah. And that she would have enjoyed finding out. And I know that our grandma would have, oh my gosh, she would have enjoyed just knowing family, but knowing that she had a sister. Yeah. That would have been huge. She wanted to know so bad if she had a sister.
Yeah. I think she would have been overwhelmed, reasonably so, right?
Yeah.
Like by the whole idea. I honestly can't even imagine her reaction because it would have been so extreme. So then you shared with them what we know so far about Estrella, about her parents and grandparents, which of course they didn't know, which we're going to get into in a moment, but how she came to be with Manuel and Rosa, and then what we know about her, the little, it's not a lot, but what we know about her after she left Emilio and married Rose. So that was all just new information to them that they knew they really didn't know anything about.
And I know we talked a little bit about the DNA and how we kind of mapped it out, but I'll just kind of bring that up again, because one of the things about the family is they know a lot. They're very family focused. They know a lot about their family as it began in Taylor Springs and then now evolved into Sandoval. And they have a big extended family and they're very connected.
Even
in that
the
way.
number of people who were in Sandoval for the whole rest of their lives and buried there.
Right.
It was a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
But they didn't really know much about life before
Correct.
Manuel and Rosa got married. They didn't know, for example, when we started having conversations, they didn't know they'd ever lived in St. Louis. They didn't know. They knew he had a first wife that died. They all thought that was Estrella's and Luisa's mom, and they never knew it was Kansas. They did not know. I had to prove that Luisa had been born in Kansas. They just didn't know that, and they certainly didn't know anything about who were Manuel's siblings, who were his parents.
Yeah.
And this happens, often with immigrants, but basically the life began once they got here. And I think I explained yesterday, I've been able to connect through DNA a large number of siblings of his, and talked with family members who are doing research on those lines, and they're in the similar story. They know much about their family once it began here as that settler came, but they don't know. They didn't know about the siblings. They didn't know who the parents were, and so they were very fascinated when I was able to tell them, I can tell you with 100% certainty who Manuel's parents were and who Estrella's mother's parents were, and the grandparents, based on the DNA. And so I explained the DNA, which I think was a little bit overwhelming, but explained how it mapped out.
It is overwhelming for sure. For somebody who's not dived into it. I've only heard it from you.
Yeah. And explained that I knew about that he had siblings and who his siblings were. And that was fascinating to them. They were mildly, or Paul at least was mildly aware of the migration pattern in general from the Asturias, Spain, to Cuba, to the United States. But we were able to kind of flesh that out and explain why that was happening and what was happening in the world at that time that facilitated why there were so many people coming and what that looked like. And so it was just very interesting to be able to share kind of that historical context and be able to just give everyone a little bit deeper level of that. And there definitely was an interest in knowing, who the exact grandparents were.
Yeah.
And then why I believed that I knew who her parents were, though I didn't have documented proof of that yet.
We believe with some probability we know who it is.
Yeah.
We definitely know the grandparents.
Yes.
And we know the two families that the mom and dad came from, and then your choices are relatively limited from there. So,
and we know for sure that grandparent A had a son that for sure married a daughter of grandparent B.
Right.
And so, and there's room for Estrella to be in the timeline over there when their children were born.
Right.
So it gives credence that with a high likelihood they are probably her parents, and they also immigrated to St. Louis close by the family
Within
after
blocks.
Estrella did. Yeah. So chances are that as a family, but like I said, no DNA matches that I'm aware of in that particular line to be able to line it up yet.
Yeah. Well, and that's where some of the storytelling came in, is the family was looking at photos and we're talking about this, and then stories started to come out. So one of the things we learned pretty quickly is that nicknames are very common in this family. As a matter of fact, one story was shared about a family member that they thought that it was well into adulthood before one of the family members realized that the name that they knew her by was not her given name.
That was a half sister of Estrella.
Yeah,
right?
That it was a nickname, and they were like, I had no idea. I just
her name
thought
is Pasita. That's her given name, and she was often called, as many in Spanish families, the endearing name like Niña, as a little girl. But basically, that was so heavily used that they just thought it was Niña.
Well, they actually changed it to Nina.
Well, it became her name in school, and they kind of anglicized it to Nina, and so they all knew her as Nina, but her actual given name is Pasita.
That's so funny.
And even at the table, the other sisters didn't know that.
Yeah,
until
they were like,
day.
"What? We didn't know that." Yeah, I mean, that's how common the nicknames were, and how used they were, like to not even know.
Well, also the picture we talked about of Manuel and Rosa and the kids in the 1920s, beautiful picture. So that was, Paul had that printed out big, and he passed it to his sisters. And he asked both of them separately, when one was present and the other was not, can you tell me who anybody in this picture is? And none of them could recognize anyone in the picture. And so then he said, well, this is Grandma and Grandpa and all the kids. And then they were like, oh, I recognize. But the point is, like, these pictures had not been looked at by the family for a long time either.
Or maybe at all. They didn't know. So you already talked a little bit about Emilio, and his nickname to the world was okay. And they kind of shared with us what that was about. They said he didn't know a lot of English. And so when people would talk to him, he would just say, okay, all the time. Like you would talk to him and they would say, okay, okay. And one of Paul's sisters said, I didn't know any Spanish. And when he talked, I couldn't understand anything that he said. So it was just like, he would always just say, okay, okay, okay. And so he became okay. Like that was his nickname.
Literally on his headstone.
On his headstone. I mean, his birth name is there too, but then his nickname. Because I asked, what is the okay? Because I didn't know that. And they were like, oh, that was his nickname. Like, okay, there's a story there. And there was. It was really great. So that was really interesting. But also the Mary Rose one. You want to tell about her name?
So they said, actually, when Mary Rose was born, and again, every document we saw said Mary Rose, her name was actually Maria, which again would fit very much. Yes. So that's what Estrella named her. She named her Maria.
Yeah.
And when she went to school, when she went to kindergarten, the school said, well, you have to have a middle name. Which I don't know why that
matters.
Yeah. But
maybe too many kids with the same first name?
Yeah, I don't know. And so Rosa, who was her grandmother, but who was raising her as her mother, said, well, then I'll give her my name as her middle name. So the school wrote it down as Maria Rosa. And then it got anglicized to Mary Rose. And so then Mary Rose kind of stuck as her name. But the name that she was born with was Maria. And then that's how it evolved to be.
And that's what's
Mary
on her
Rose.
Birth record?
Yeah.
Maria? Okay.
Yep.
I thought that was really interesting.
Well, the other really interesting one, he pulled out in his binder of all the documents he had the obituary for his mom, which I had read before. I'd read it online. For Mary Rose. And I'd read it before online. So he had it printed out, and I'm looking at it again, and I had noticed this, and I never really knew what it was about, but it caught my attention again. When it listed Mary Rose's mother, it said her mother was Sylvia, which I thought that was odd because we know her mother's Estrella
or Stella.
But then so it's printed out. But then he edited it with a pen and he crossed out Sylvia and he wrote Estrella, which of course caught my eye again. And so I asked about that. I said, was that a typo, whatever? Because obituaries are. You can put whatever you want in obituary.
Right.
Whoever's the one drafting it is the one that puts on there. And he said, well, no, we never knew that her name was Estrella. We knew her by Sylvia, which is actually a really big deal. And now we know that by the time the 1920 census came, she was 15, she was in school, and she's listed on the census. I've seen a handwritten copy as Estrella. So by the time she was 15, she was going by the name Estrella.
So it's a reasonable guess that her guardian would have written that name.
Yeah.
And that would be her name.
Right. But there was this frequency of Sylvia, and they don't really know. They don't know. They just know that's how she's always referred to, and that they never learned till later that her name was Estrella. So we're not sure. We have lots of questions. The possibility exists that Sylvia was her name, and that Estrella was a nickname, because they obviously were big in nicknames, and it stuck. Yeah. And that by the time she was, school age, at 15, she was going by Estrella. When she did her marriage license to Emilio, she was using the name Stella.
Yeah.
So it's possible. Or the possibility is that Sylvia was a nickname, except that Estrella sounds to me more like a nickname than Sylvia. But who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's very curious. And so it also gives us a little bit of looking around. I've never been able to find, for example, any of the records showing Estrella's arrival, but I've been looking under the name Estrella. Well, what if it was Sylvia?
What if we look at Sylvia?
What if it's Sylvia? And so it kind of gives another area to look and see, to kind of flesh that out. Where did that name Sylvia come from? Why was she called that, at some points?
Yeah.
And that could potentially open things up wide.
Yeah, interesting. It's definitely another place to look for sure. So another interesting story. I mean, we've been saying throughout the podcast that in the beginning, we believed that Manuel was Estrella's father. It's a logical conclusion just based on what's on paper. And then, of course...
And she was raised as
his daughter. And based on DNA, we know that that's not true. And that was a surprise even to the family. Yep. Which what I'm about to share shows that even the family had different understandings. Mm-hmm. For the most part, the family accepted that Estrella was Manuel and Rosa's child.
Right. Whether DNA is there or not, she was accepted and thought of and treated as part of the family.
And that's
which
what
answers an important question.
Right. And that's what they believed to be true. But then one of Paul's sisters, Roberta, shared that her mom, Mary Rose, found out that she was not Manuel and Rosa's daughter when she was 13. So Mary Rose shared this with Roberta. Roberta is her oldest daughter. I'm guessing the other children were never told, because this is something you might not, when I say it, but it's something you might not share with everyone, right? So she said that Rosa sat her down when she was 13 and explained that she and Manuel were not her parents, and her biological father, who they called Emil at the table, but Emilio, was coming to rent a room from them. He was going to live in their home. And so she needed to know that. I mean, clearly it was going to come out that he was her father, and she needed to know that. We don't know what they told her about her mother, except Roberta said that her mother said, "My mom just took off and left me." So it's reasonable that she was told something like that. Lines. We don't know if a name was given or anything like that. That wasn't shared. But just the idea that Emilio was her father, and that her mom had taken off and left. And that also, so it does show that while most of the family believed that wait a minute. That wouldn't be Estrella. I just got that messed up. You didn't even correct me.
I know. I was trying to just roll with it.
Okay, so here's a real thing. Sometimes we get the generations messed up in the middle of the conversation, right?
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Okay, let me back up. Okay, so Estrella, the family believed Estrella was Manuel and Rosa's daughter.
Yes.
And then when Estrella left, I'm sorry if this is confusing. It's okay. We'll leave it in because this is a real thing.
Yes.
That happens often. It even happened on the day of, when we were all of a sudden like thinking one generation, we're like, oh, no, that. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's another generation. Yeah. So I apologize for that. Estrella, they believed Estrella was the child of Manuel and Rosa, and she was raised as such.
Yes.
Yes. I apologize. This was Mary Rose. And to know that Mary Rose was not Manuel and Rosa's child.
Yes.
She found out at 13. I assume the rest of the family did find out. Did they know? They must have.
Well, remember they talked about that when Joe found out, he was mad. So at some point he did find out, but it must have been older.
So they did find out at some point. So I apologize for that confusion, although that does happen a lot. That's why I should stick to my notes. Okay, so it kind of corrects the narrative about who raised Mary Rose and how Emilio was involved. Yeah. Because at first we thought because Estrella and Emilio lived next door to Manuel and Rosa when they first got married and had Mary Rose, correct?
Yes.
And then we kind of thought Emilio continued to raise her and Manuel and Rosa helped. But actually, it was much more than that. She went to live with Manuel and Rosa.
And Emil went to Florida.
And Emil left, right. And for 13 years, the entire family believed that because she was raised alongside the other children. Although you did mention if they had done the math with Rosa's own children.
Because remember that Rosa was pregnant at the same time as Estrella. So Mary Rose was born, and like 6 months later, Rosa's youngest, which I believe her name is Anne, was born. And so that's, first of all, if they did the math, they would have already figured it out. But, they were all loving each other, and that's all that mattered, right? But the reality is then those two were, when Rosa took in Mary Rose, she had two babies. She had two little babies that were then raised side by side as sisters.
Right. But they just, it wasn't until she was 13 that she knew. I don't know when the rest of the family knew.
Probably the same time.
Yeah, maybe the same. Well, yeah.
Or
somebody, because once Emilio's in the household, people are going to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so he was involved though.
Yes.
He was present, at least from 13 on for some time. Yeah. So that did correct that narrative that Emilio was present and involved to a degree, but was not the primary caregiver.
So there's another important memory that came up about in this conversation. So also the oldest sister, Bert, she remembered that Mary Rose told her about relatives coming from California. She believes that was Louisa, and that would fit the facts of what we know.
Yeah.
And that when Louisa came over, she didn't know why she was there. She didn't know exactly when she was there. But while she was there, that Mary Rose overheard them talking, and that they were talking about her mother, which would be Estrella. Once they realized that she was listening, they did as parents do, and shooed her,
made her leave
the room,
the room.
so she didn't hear the rest.
Yeah.
But then that kind of gives just some interesting context. Now, who knows what that could have been? Louisa could have been asking about.
Yeah.
Estrella. Or we've also postulated that at some point Estrella did connect and have communication with Louisa because they seem to have information, after she left.
Yeah.
So it could be more of Louisa giving updates about Estrella. Like who knows what that was? Again, time is gone. The people who were having the conversations are, not
That's
here
right.
any longer to be able to sort that out. But and that would have been after she was 13 because she did know
Right.
her mother wasn't.
Let me propose another possibility. It could be that she heard that conversation before she was 13, but didn't realize who that might have been that they were talking about until after.
Possibly.
So
Yeah.
either way, but it is most likely she was aware, because otherwise she probably wouldn't have remembered it, right? But yeah, I mean, I can understand. And I also think about Louisa, whether Louisa was sharing or Rosa was sharing. Here's the point. They talked about her.
Yeah.
Now, the children may not have known and talked because that's what we do as parents. Like you said, like we talk and we don't involve the children in things that really are beyond their understanding, or what they should be exposed to at that time. But of course, the parents would have talked. She didn't leave and then was never thought of or spoke of again.
Correct.
That did not happen.
Correct.
So whether Louisa was sharing details or they were just asking about her or whatever, we don't know. But whatever it was, Mary Rose has that memory that they were and the impression that they were speaking about her mother. Yeah. So it was really interesting.
So one of the other interesting things that came out, they talked about Emilio once he came back. They, described him as a colorful character, which gives a little bit of context to Estrella's life.
Yeah, I mean, she had a type.
She had a type, for sure. They talked about...
Let me back up and say, that does not mean that Emilio engaged in the type of behaviors we know about Christopher. I do not.
Right.
I don't want any family member to hear me say that. I'm just saying
there's a personality type.
There's
involved.
a personality type, yeah.
So, but anyways, that he liked to party, that he would typically be out drinking. He had a drinking buddy. In fact, they believe the drinking buddy. There's a man married next to Emilio that they're not sure why he's married. He's not family, but he's right there, and they believe it's his drinking buddy.
Their headstones are very close together.
And so, anyways, that he was out drinking and partying a lot. That he would come out all night. He would come back, and that usually Rosa would lay into him in Spanish. So
they didn't know what she said,
right? But they heard it.
They knew.
Yeah,
they knew what she said.
That he liked to drink, they liked the women, and they had that kind of thing going on. But anyways, they also said that he was continuing to send money to Spain well into the 1970s, and they said we don't know who he's sending it to. We kind of always thought he was sending it to Estrella, and we kind of stopped. Why would you think to Estrella? Like, that makes no sense, And then as we're trying to sort this out, he pulls out these two letters.
Yeah. Still in envelopes. They were written in 74, I think 71. They were written from someone in Spain and sent to Emilio, and then they had the copies of them still. And they also then revealed that these were written in Spanish and that none of them could read Spanish. And so they had no idea what it said, but that they knew that it was from whoever he was sending money to. And so we're like... Can we read the letters right now? Yeah. So, I mean, we don't know Spanish either, but we have tools.
We did a couple things. We tried first using Google Translate and hovered, over it. And it shared a little bit of information, but it was really hard to sort out. It was very disjointed. So then I took a picture of it and I put it into ChatGPT, and it did translate roughly, but there were some issues that weren't right, and some of the gender connotations seemed to be a little off, and so we just didn't feel like we had a good understanding of what exactly it was. But we did figure out before we got the full translation just from chat, and we did figure out that it was a niece of Emilio's that was basically thanking him for the money that he was sending and kind of giving an update on the family.
Yeah.
So then you kind of take over what you did next to get the full translation.
Yeah. So I know somebody, Spanish is their first language, and I texted them late last night and said, would you be willing to do this? Like, you know, I mean, I don't want to put anybody out, but they said that they would. I said, okay, no rush. Like, my family would really appreciate it if you could translate this for us. And they sent it to me at midnight last night. So thank you, friend, for sending that to me. I really appreciate it.
Do you want to read one of the letters?
I want to. Do you want me to read the whole thing or just a portion? I can read it.
Yeah.
Let me read. There's one that was 2-sided and one that was just one page. By the way, the handwriting in these letters is beautiful.
Beautiful.
I wish I
It's
had
a lost
that.
art.
I'm sorry to my future relatives who might look at anything that I've ever written. You're not going to be able to read it that easily.
No, and look at mine. It's not beautiful.
It's not beautiful, and it might not even be legible. I don't know. I may make sure I just don't leave behind anything written. So yeah, I'll read this, and I will say he said that there were some mistakes, some like spelling errors or punctuation or whatever. So he translated for the meaning as opposed to word for word translation, but he tried to get it pretty close for it to make sense. So it says, Mr. Emilio Valdez, dear uncle, hoping you are well. I am replying to your letter and taking in everything you tell me. Uncle, we really haven't had much luck. I also, this season, had my unmarried son with a serious issue. Now he is fairly well. The doctor still hasn't discharged him. And imagine he was supposed to get married in October after 5 years of courting. Oh, poor guy. Now he doesn't even feel like it because he's going away. I don't know what that means. At home is the married daughter who has a 6-year-old child. And last year around this time, the one who is in France came on vacation. He is married to a girl from Navarra. He comes every 2 years, stays a month, 15 days with us and another 15 in Navarra at the house of his mother-in-law. And 2 days before leaving was when he had that terrible accident. I had to go to Navarra without wanting to because I'm no longer up for running around the world. But he was my son and I had to do it. He was in the clinic, unable to move, and he was like that for 2 months without moving and another 4 months of rest. So then just imagine vacation, 6 months in Spain, 3 children, and the 2 of them, 5 people. He left at the end of January, still not feeling strong, but he wanted to go see if he could work. He left the family in Navarra. 2 months later, he came back to get them. He is working, says he still feels it in that area. It was a dislocated hip. That was the injury. So then you see how many problems there are in life and that one cannot be at peace, Uncle. And about Uncle Jesus, may he rest in peace. I see what you're telling me. He meant well, maybe just had little luck or a hot head, or it was the way life turned out. I don't know what it could have been. He has really changed because he used to write to me very often, very affectionate letters, and he used to send me something from time to time. I believe he would have sent me a few dollars for the troubles. Uncle, I think the man realized he might have done things wrong because a mother should never be forgotten. My grandmother and mother, may they both rest in peace, felt that deeply. I remember so many times, even though I was very young, how happy they were when they received a letter from him. And if he sent a few dollars, what a joy, because there were so many illnesses and no one to work. So that we're getting clues as to why Emilio is sending money home. Yeah. Clearly, families had a lot of struggles. Yeah. So this is about Emilio. He says, Uncle, and about your situation, I see what you're telling me, and I'm very glad that you stay in touch with your daughter and that you don't abandon her. I would be delighted to have her near me, but I see what you say. Well, what matters is she doesn't lack anything.
Yeah.
And then she says, take care of yourself, and for now, greetings to your daughter, my cousin, whom I would love to meet. She could come for a visit to Spain, and you could come with her. A strong and affectionate hug, Pergentina Prendes. And then the other letter, she asked this, and again, specifically, she says, and how is my cousin Maria?
Yeah.
I so wish I could meet them. Why don't you tell her to come to Spain next year for a trip? And you can come with her. So I just thought that was really cool. Nothing earth-shattering or anything like that, but just cool to have that. And hopefully the family is
well, we sent a screenshot of what the translation was to Paul last night, and he wrote back I sent it this morning, and he wrote back and said, thank you. He said, I've always wondered what those letters said.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was I didn't expect to get the translation as quickly as I did, but grateful for that. And felt like it was even if I hadn't sent it to the person I had sent it to, I know many other people that I could have sent it to who would have been able to translate it for us. So I didn't feel like I felt like that was something really simple that we could get done pretty quickly and they could have that. I even thought about just typing it up into like 2-page letter formats instead of them just having it on screenshots on their phone and sending it. So they just have the document, but we'll see. So, so we left that gathering. I left the gathering just feeling grateful to have met these really beautiful people. They were very gracious hosts and wonderful to open their lives and their home to us, and just really grateful that they were willing to meet. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, so I said this before, but I'll say it again. It was on one part very surreal because, again, these are names and locations and places and details that I've been digging in and mulling around for a long time and giving lots of effort to. But now to be present and to see people and see locations and see the communities and all those things was just very, very surreal. And also kind of has me hungry to find some more information out.
Yeah, right. I want more.
Right. One of the little things on the side note, we passed through Hillsborough, which we mentioned is one of the towns, and we stopped actually for coffee. It's cutest downtown I've seen in a long time.
I already told my husband I want to go back.
There's definitely some antiquing to be done. We were there early on a Sunday morning, so nothing was open except for the coffee shop.
House.
But we're definitely going back. But when we went into the coffee house, the owner who was running it, as well as another gentleman that was there,
who owns the creamery
down the street. Clearly, they are locals that have been in their entire life, and so we were sharing a little bit about what we were doing and why we were there. And so then afterwards, you found a little, I don't know, Facebook blurb or something, a Facebook page.
It showed up on my Facebook page, of course, because algorithms.
They're always watching
you.
Just
showed up a Hillsborough historic something, I can't remember, Facebook group. And
so we looked into it. And first of all, I've never seen a page so well done.
Oh, it's so good.
So good. Very historical, very informative, and just beautiful thing. And so I decided to reach out to the person who manages that page. I figure he's going to be a local who knows everything about everything. Yeah. And so I
clearly interested in the history.
Right.
And we should say Hillsborough is a small town, but it is very near Taylor Springs. So Taylor Springs is almost like a little
I think it's kind of incorporated together, because I don't think Taylor Springs is its own city. I think it's like even on the census, it's Hillsborough, and then Taylor Springs is like this little like neighborhood or whatever. Yeah. So they're very connected.
I looked up where would kids now. I gave the time frame and said, where would kids who lived in Taylor Springs, where would they have gone to school? And of course, they said the young children would have gone to probably a rural school, like one room kind of situation, likely. But high school would have gone to Hillsborough. Yeah.
So anyways, wrote to him, kind of didn't give too much detail. You have to be careful with these things. People get scared away. But gave enough information, told him I had been through the town and that I liked this page and all the different things. And then I said, I'm looking for information on Estrella Suarez around 1923, 25. Do you happen to, in all of your research about the community, do you happen to know anything? And then mentioned that there's a Hillsborough library, and we did notice they had a genealogy room. We wanted to go back.
Yeah.
He wrote back right away, and he said, I'm really busy right now because we have this huge historical event that actually starts, I think, tomorrow or Wednesday.
Settlers
Days or something.
I think it's a whole week of festivities. Yeah. I wish that I could go.
But he said, I can help, after that. But he said, you also don't want to go to the library in Hillsborough so much. There's not as much there. You want to go to the one in Litchfield, and this is what you should, look into. So just kind of excited to see kind of how that contact might flesh out.
Litchfield is in the same county?
Yeah. That's where we stayed in the hotel on the way down. So I just didn't know. It's close by. I'm not sure exactly the proximity, but it's the closest big city.
Yeah. It must be in the same county if he thinks it might have some of the records for Taylor Springs and Hillsborough. And you did say that Manuel and Rosa and their family did live in Hillsborough for a time at one point. Not when Estrella was with them, but we could find other... I don't know. When I was scrolling through posts, so there's a couple of things. I apologize to anybody in Hillsborough if I don't get this correct, but what I saw posts about was they're creating a new historic marker about the industry in Hillsborough and some of the important industries. Of course, we know the mine was one, but there are a couple of other industries. I don't want to try to mention them because I probably will get it wrong, but the town has just created this historic marker that either has recently been put up or is going to be put up.
I think it's being like memorialized this week.
At these festivities. And then I also saw posts about their high school, Hillsborough High School. And if I'm getting this correct, it was recently torn down. Like it says 1921 to 1925, or 1921 to 2025. And then people were posting and commenting on pictures of the building coming down. So I think that was, obviously it was fairly recent if it was in 2025.
Well, and keep in mind, if that was built in 1921, Estrella probably went there.
Yeah. Assuming
she didn't get married till like 22, 23, I can't remember.
I can't. I don't want to say a date, but it's possible. We know that there are multiple times that she's referred to as a student. If she was in school.
Because the 1920 census, she was 15.
Yeah, and so if she was in school, then it seems like Hillsborough would have been where she went. So, that would be very interesting. Or interesting to find any of the family in any of the posts. So, like, people post a lot of, and old, there were things back to the 1920s. People were posting pictures and whatever. So that could be a really fun resource. But also just looks like a really cool place to visit. And I want to go back. So, it's been a day and a half.
Yeah.
Not quite 48 hours, right? since we had this meeting, and we've had time to process. So this morning I called Mom to get her perspective on the day. I actually interrupted her at work, but anyway. So here's some of what she had to say. These are her words. She said, I never really thought in terms of Florence and Marie Christine being her mother, as being abandoned. And I thought that was interesting. Yeah. She said, I knew they were put up for adoption. I just never attached the word abandoned. And I never really even felt like abandoned, But she said meeting Mary Rose's family and
Mary Rose was for sure abandoned.
Right. And hearing their perspective, even Mary Rose's idea, her understanding, and she's like, my mom just took off and left me, that's abandonment.
Yeah.
Right. And so just a very different perspective. And she said, to meet with them and to realize that our situations, are not just connected by the same person, but by a similar history.
An experience.
An experience, yes, by the same person, but it's just the word abandoned became more real to her.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not putting words in her mouth. I'm just wondering, maybe a sense of sadness for herself and for her first cousins for that sense of abandonment.
Right. Well, and the sadness that she knew that her mom felt about feeling that she didn't know why her parents didn't keep her and why she wasn't connected to them.
Yeah.
And then to know that Mary Rose had a similar sadness and that they shared that.
Yeah. Exactly. She said this. She said, my first inclination is to make excuses for Estrella and to explain. She's like, but we can't do that. We can only uncover facts and try not to be harsh or judgmental, which is compassion, right? And then the last thing, so at the listeners, at the end of our time together, we made sure to take pictures. If we get permission, we will definitely post them. I think we'll get permission. Yeah. It was really funny. I said, we need to take some pictures. And they're like, oh, okay. And I said, well, look, we've been sitting around looking at all these family pictures. And 60, 100 years from now, we need to make sure our pictures are in that pile together. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. We need to do that. So first we took a picture of the 4 first cousins and got a good picture of the 4 of them, Paul and his 2 sisters, and then our mom together. And then one of the sisters had brought one of her daughters, and then you and I were there. And so Paul's wife took a picture of all of us together. And this is what Mom had to say about that. She said, meeting in person, meeting real people that now we have a relationship with, we have an experience with. She's like, that is really what sticks with me. And she said, when we went to take the picture all together, one person grabbed her hand, the niece grabbed her hand, and she said, I just realized in that moment, we are family. This is my family.
Yeah.
And I almost got a little emotional hearing that from her this morning. I think I'd be interested to talk to her a little while from now and have her expound on how she feels about that, because our mom does not have a lot of her immediate family. Her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren actually is quite extensive, but her mom has passed, her dad has passed, her brother has passed. She has some contact with other family, but not much. Niece, nephew, not really contact with them. And I guess she has a first cousin, at least through our grandpa's side, and maybe a few, but really she doesn't have a lot of family, you know, the way we saw family and the way we experienced family.
And she didn't even grow up with a lot of family because it was a pretty small group.
Yeah, she really didn't. And so I think I'd be interested, I think it was important to her to have that sense of family. And I'd be interested to hear maybe a little while from now more about that importance of just having that realization in that moment, like, we're family, you know.
So the next day I wrote an email to Paul and just thanked him again and, you know, told him how much we appreciated the visit and shared a few things. And, you know, he wrote back and talked about how much he enjoyed the visit and he appreciated it as well. And his closing line was, if you're ever in the area, please stop back by.
Yeah.
And so that's what family says, right? Like, this was not a one-time visit. Our families are now connected.
Yeah. Maybe not as clear of a link, but another link. We met on a Sunday. You know, all of us took time off work and met on a Sunday. Some of our listeners may know, but others would not. My mom is a retired pastor. I am a pastor. My husband and I are pastors. You were a pastor, but faithfully attend and are a believer. And one of the sisters ended up having to come late because she was attending the baptism of a young man she's been working with. And so we talked not much about faith, but just it became very clear how prominent faith is in both of our families. Yeah. And to me, that was a special link as well.
Yeah, they're very connected to the Catholic Church. I think that's their primary origin of faith. And they've talked about, I can't remember the exact relationship. I think it's a cousin or an aunt that's a nun.
I think he said it. Now I can't remember. I think a cousin because... Yeah.
Well, it's about the same age as he is. And this, remind me, she was celebrating...
She will be celebrating her 75th anniversary as a nun.
Yeah. And so he's traveling to Indiana to go be there for that celebration. And she lived in Kenya for a while.
Yeah, around the world, he said. Yeah, she served that. So that was kind of a special link for us.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they kind of... I think they related to that as well when we were like, well, actually, we should tell you, like, this is really important to us too. So that's cool. Well, in our next episode, we will review all the hanging threads that we've uncovered on this journey together. So what questions remain and what threads are still to be pulled.
And we spoke with two other relatives for the very first time within the same 24 hours that this all happened. And we will soon be meeting them as well. That's all in the works.
Yep.
And so we're going to reveal who we talked to and what we discussed and what new threads those conversations uncovered. And that's going to be another fun one.
Yes, fantastic. Thanks for listening. If you're walking your own search through DNA research, silence, or your family story, you're not alone.
If you want to learn more about our story, you can read it chapter by chapter on Substack at a blog called Buried Threads. We'd love it if you subscribed or left a review. It helps other listeners to find us. And if you've uncovered something through DNA that changed your understanding of your family, we would love to hear about it. Message us on Substack or find us on Instagram at Buried Threads.
Watch for our next episode to post right here. We'll also be dropping some documents and photos with each podcast. Let us know your questions and your comments as we go.
Until next week, keep pulling the thread.